Hello everyone, I'm Vivek Atray and we're going to talk about some interesting words and terms and usages in languages. ऊल जलूल बातें नहीं करेंगे लेकिन ऊल जलूल जैसे शब्दों के बारे में बात करेंगे, यानी कि ऐसे शब्द जो साउंड भी इंटरेस्टिंग करते हैं and they are meaningful but they come together. I really get fascinated by such words. Ul Jalul, for example, is a term that is used a lot for somebody who's saying something which is not very sensible. इतना भी बोल देते हैं कि ऊल जलूल बक रहा है. Not very parliamentary, but that is how it is used. That's somebody who's speaking nonsense. But the thing is, I'm not coming into dictionary meanings. But the fact is that ul jalul is a term which gives me so much, it makes me think. The word ul on its own would not really mean anything much unless there's a technical meaning. And jalul would also not. These are Hindustani terminologies. They may be from Hindi or Urdu, and this one particularly is from Urdu. But the thing is that they are used in a common way, and many people use them. And ul jalul is something which just rhymes with each other. Ul and jalul mean something unique, which is nonsensical, of course. But let's come to the next one. And to emphasize the point as to what I mean, the thing is, the word is Titar Bitar. Now, Titar Bitar is something that, there was firing or the hunter was shooting and the birds were flying Titar Bitar, idhar udhar ud gaye. Idhar udhar is also another one, by the way. But Titar Bitar is more interesting. So, matlab ki crowd ko Titar Bitar kar diya. Ya, even you can probably use it as the batsman was so aggressive that the bowling lineup went Titar Bitar. Idhar udhar ho gaye, scattered ho gaye. So these are not dictionary meanings, as I said, but the meanings as I understand them as a writer and a speaker. So Titar Bitar is something which also makes a lot of sense only together. If you say Titar or Bitar separately, doesn't really make sense. And of course, there's a bird known as Titar and a word known as Bistar, but they're similar. But Titar Bitar is a term used only together, Titar and Bitar. Another one that I have is AANAN PHANAN. Now, AANAN PHANAN is also that, AANAN PHANAN mein nikal gaye, yani ki jaldbazi. AANAN PHANAN also probably means without pausing or reflecting, you're just in a hurry, in a scurry, and you just got up and had to rush or something like that. AANAN PHANAN unhone ye apna prasthan kiya, ya wahan se wo chale gaye. So something which is very in a hurry. Again, AANAN and PHANAN, obviously words which are not very meaningful together. Although nowadays, if you play Scrabble and you look up the meaning of any sound, it turns out to be a word, but not in earlier times. So I guess nothing really meaningful comes out of either one of them. It's only the togetherness of AANAN and PHANAN which makes them so meaningful. Then we come to HABRA TABRI. Now, HABRA TABRI is again जल्दबाजी, बहुत ज़्यादा excitement या बहुत ज़्यादा कुछ ऐसे कुछ करना जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा pause या reflection के बाद नहीं है. HABRA TABRI में उन्होंने ये बोल दिया, restlessness, a kind of instantaneous response perhaps or a reaction. So HABRA TABRI में उन्होंने ऐसा कर दिया. He did something or she did something which would not logically have been otherwise done by this person. So habra tabdi wale jo log hote hain wo thode se restless bhi hote hain, pause nahi kar pate, and then they get into a tizzy, and that is something which again creates a problem for people. Again, habra and tabdi not meaningful words without each other, and you can't even say tabdi habra, you have to say habra tabdi to make it sound meaningful. And if you go to a shop or you go to a street or you go to anywhere in North India, I guess, and you say habra tabri, the person will know what you mean. Okay, another one is ANAAP SHANAP. Now, ANAAP SHANAP is a little more, I think, informal. Whereas the words I've mentioned till now probably be found in the Hindustani terminology and dictionary. I don't really know about AANAN PHANAN much, but the others have been. But अनाप शनाप is again used a lot. It's like अनाप शनाप बोल रहा है, which means nonsense again. So ANAP SHANAP is something which many of our politicians indulge in, ANAP SHANAP bolna, and also a lot of our other public life people ANAP SHANAP बोलते हैं. लेकिन ये है कि कई लोग बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बातें करते हैं कि वो वैसे तो अच्छी बात कर रहे होते हैं, बट बीच बीच में अनाप शनाप बोल देते हैं. जैसे कपिल शर्मा शो है, तो कपिल शर्मा भी कभी कभी अनाप शनाप बोल देता है या बोल देते हैं, तो वो मतलब फनी बनाने के लिए. एंड जस्ट his caste is such, Kapil Sharma's, that they will come up with crazy ideas and crazy dialogues and crazy thoughts, and then suddenly it's anap shanap comes out. Another one is UBARH KHABARH. UBARH KHABARH. UBARH KHABARH is something which is really, really interesting for me. And I was telling my wife Nina one day long ago, I said we should make a movie like on terms of this kind, HABRA TABRI naam ki picture kitni hit ho jayegi. HERA PHERI I've heard of course. HERA PHERI you know very well. HERA PHERI is a movie as well, and HERA PHERI means obviously something which is deceitful, which is not honest. It's dishonesty. So HERA PHERI karna. But UBARH KHABARH is even more interesting. If you look at the word itself, it indicates a bit of roughness, roughage. It's not smooth sailing. And the word itself is not smooth sailing. UBARH KHABARH sadak, UBARH KHABARH rasta. That means bumpy road. So a bumpy road is something which obviously is not going to give us a smooth sailing. And the word itself, UBARH and KHABARH, they basically reflect the meaning. I mean, if they were not UBARH KHABARH, they were UBARH KHABARH. It doesn't really make sense. The R in the words, which is not something that you can actually even spell in English. English doesn't have a R. And English, by the way, doesn't even have too much of th. It does, thermal and all. But it's very difficult for Westerners to pronounce it in certain ways. So, but UBARH KHABARH is something which is basically a rough ride, a road which is bumpy, or a rasta which is bumpy, or the surface which is bumpy. And I think these words are fantastic. Again, you can't say KHABARH, UBARH. You'll have to say UBARH KHABARH to make your meaning clear and absolutely crystal clear. Then there's another very interesting terminology, which is CHAHAL PAHAL. CHAHAL PAHAL. Now, all these terms that I'm using are, obviously there are two parts to each of them. And CHAHAL PAHAL means रौनक, means बहुत सारे लोग वहाँ पे तो चहल पहल थी. जैसे पैंडेमिक था तो सड़कों पे चहल पहल खत्म हो गई. अभी चहल पहल वापस आ गई है और होपफुली ठीक ही रहेगा. So the CHAHAL PAHAL is another term which is very interesting. And if you look at it, CHAHAL again is a name. I've heard, I think our leg spinner Yuzvendra Chahal or Chahal, whatever, Chahal is somebody who is playing IPL, plays for India. And PAHAL is of course a word in its own right. उन्होंने इसकी पहल की, somebody who took an initiative or did something new. And that is something which exists on its own. But then CHAHAL PAHAL has a totally different meaning together. And it is a terminology which is used together, which is very interesting. So again, that is another one. I have another one which is very simple. It's ULTA PULTA. Now, ULTA PULTA is obviously, again, you can say ULTA. And that itself means something. It means upside down, of course. But ULTA PULTA has more connotations. उल्टा पुल्टा मीन्स कि सब गड़बड़ है, ये उल्टा पुल्टा सिस्टम है, ये उल्टा पुल्टा शहर है, उल्टे पुल्टे लोग हैं. So it becomes very interesting indeed. And ulta pulta is something which has more punch in it than just saying ulta. And if you look at pulta, I don't think pulta is a word. And again, ulta pulta को भी आप उल्टा पुल्टा करके पुल्टा उल्टा नहीं बोल सकते. So वही मैंने बोल कैसे दिया, बड़ा मुश्किल बोलना था. It's like a tongue twister. So उल्टा पुल्टा को पुल्टा उल्टा करके आप उल्टा पुल्टा नहीं कर सकते. So you have to be, whatever it was, you have to be in the correct sequence. And ulta pulta is something which means upside down or the other way around, or it means sab kuch gadbad ho raha hai. Also, in English, we have certain terminologies which are a little similar. And Hindustani में भी और बहुत हैं. ये नहीं कि हमने सारे cover करने आज. but ये है कि it's interesting to talk about these words. So English के थोड़े से हम देख लेते हैं. If you look at hustle bustle, now hustle bustle is again, you know, Ronak and Chahal Pahal type of word. Hustle bustle. There's a hustle bustle in the market, hustle bustle in the entrance to a cricket stadium when Sachin Tendulkar was playing, of course, not now. But the hustle bustle is basically a word which describes the scene. And hustle is a word which is used on its own as well. You know, you hustle someone, you hurry someone, you kind of pressurize someone. And bustle is also used for hustle bustle. I as a writer would use bustle independently also, perhaps at times take that liberty. But hustle bustle go together, and they really make sense to someone who has been fond of the language. Another one that I have is hither tither. Now, hither tither wanderest thou is a line from chant by Paramahansa Yogananda, the author of the autobiography of a yogi. So he says, why, O mind, wanderest thou is one of them. And then he says, hither tither wanderest thou. Basically, your mind is wandering here and there. So hither tither is basically about either udar. So it's like hither tither means yahan wahan, and either udar. So again, without the second word, it doesn't really give that impact. And of course, hither is another word which is used. So you might say, come hither. That means come here. And Shakespearean languages would have used that, users. So hither, come hither. But tither, I doubt that you can use it on its own. Hither tither, of course, it makes a lot of sense. And another one which is quite known to people is hodgepodge. And hodgepodge is something which is ulta again, which is basically sab gadbad ho raha hai, hodgepodge, everything went hodgepodge, which means the child destroyed the game, the Scrabble board, and all the letters went flying here, and everything became hodgepodge. Sometimes the system becomes hodgepodge, not your computer system, but the public delivery system. And also it could be something like, you know, spoiling something. So you're making it hodgepodge. That also is interesting. But again, coming to one or two interesting usages which are not two words but one word, and I find this very fascinating, is SARSARI and CURSORY. SARSARI and CURSORY, which SARSARI is basically SARSARI taur pe kuch karna, which means basically not really going into the depth of the matter and being a little at the periphery, and it's superficial, and it's something which is not deep into the subject. So SARSARI. And if you look at it, cursory has a similar meaning. A cursory glance, not a deep understanding of the situation, but a cursory glance would indicate that the situation was tense, that people were not very happy, and they might break into a mob very soon. Because as an administrator, former administrator, I have seen tensions in the crowd which led to you know, disturbances. And a cursory glance told me that things were not in order and things could go wrong. So, you know, again, it's a very similar usage. It's not like bungalow and bangla, which are very similar English and Hindustani words. Of course, bangla and bungalow. And bungalow, obviously, bungalow came from Bangla. But here, cursory and SARSARI, I have no information about whether cursory came from SARSARI or not, but they are very, very similar. They sound very similar, and it's amazing. So, you know, language is something which gives you that richness of mind, of thought, of meaning, of creative thinking. If you think about it, if we utilize these terms without thinking about them, and we are like going about our business, AANAN, PHANAN, without really getting into the depth of the matter, then obviously we are not really enjoying to the fullest what language can offer. So this was a short video on unique words and terminologies. And of course, I have a video on common Indian errors, which you might like to see, which is, again, as a writer, I like to share that with people. Things like advice and advise, why they should be used correctly and not wrongly. You cannot say please advice. You have to say please advise. and give me advice. So ये चीजें भी हैं उस वीडियो में. Please have a look at it. 20 also common Indian errors. Vivek Atray on my channel, and of course these terminologies which I use today, they will be followed up with more interesting terminologies later. And it's good to see you. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again very soon in one of my YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook broadcasts. All the best. See you.